Oh, Emma, you came at the right time. I was thinking of making this your sister Haley and her family's new home. Right after I got out of the car and filled my lungs with the crisp aspen air, I heard my father Daniel's voice from the wooden porch. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. This cabin was supposed to be my own sanctuary, the place I bought to escape the noise of the city. Surrounded by the majestic Rocky Mountains, it was the only space that could truly reset both my mind and body from my busy life. What do you mean, Dad? Why are you here? I closed the car door and slowly walked toward him. I used the spare key. We're family, so I didn't think I needed to ask for permission. There was not a trace of guilt in Daniel's tone. He didn't even seem to realize that he had trespassed into my sacred space. The spare key. When I bought this house, my mother begged me to give her one just in case of an emergency, and I had given in. I've regretted that small act of sympathy and weakness ever since. This is my vacation home. What do you mean by making it Haley's new house? Is that supposed to be a joke? Daniel looked at me as if trying to lecture a stubborn child. Why are you being so uptight, Emma? The air here is fresh and nature is abundant. There's no better place for Haley's kids to grow up. There wasn't a single sign of shame or even the slightest hint that a discussion might have been appropriate. He spoke as if it were only natural that my property was family property, and that, as the head of the household, he had the right to decide how it should be used. That was the logic my family lived by. My success had never been seen as the result of my own effort, but as a shared resource for everyone to use freely. This is my house. I'm the owner. If Haley and her family need a home, the least you could do is talk to me first. Don't you think? Talk? There's no need for that between family. You already have that fancy penthouse in New York. You hardly ever use this place. If it's just sitting here empty, why not make it useful for the family? Don't you agree? I could feel the heat of anger rising to my throat, but I swallowed it back. Losing my temper here would only give them what they wanted. I needed to stay calm and confirm the facts. I walked past Daniel, opened the heavy oak door, and stepped inside the house. Then I immediately noticed something strange. A thin layer of white dust had settled on the warm walnut floor I had so carefully chosen. With a growing sense of unease, I walked straight down the hallway and placed my hand on the bathroom doorknob. What spread out before me was a hideous space that bore no resemblance to the bathroom I remembered. The warm, natural stone tiles I had chosen so carefully, and the wooden vanity that gave off the scent of the forest, were completely gone. In their place, cold, glossy white marble covered everything from floor to wall, and the bathtub had been replaced with a gaudy, over-decorated monstrosity with tacky golden claw feet. What? Is this? My voice came out lower and colder than I expected. Oh, the bathroom? Haley said she liked this kind of European style. Looks nice, doesn't it? Daniel said proudly from behind me. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened the door to the adjacent bedroom. There, too, was a room I no longer recognized. The calm, earth-toned walls I had chosen for meditation were now covered in Haley's favorite pastel pink damask wallpaper, and the spot by the window where I used to sit in my beloved leather armchair to read quietly had been replaced by a massive vanity surrounded by a blinding frame of Hollywood-style lights. It felt as though my space, my values, and even my very existence were being painted over with layers of vulgar pink and gold. It was an unbearable kind of violence. How wonderful, Dad. It's such a Haley-like room. I turned around slowly, forcing myself to sound calm. Daniel completely missed the meaning behind my words and replied with pride. Right? It's my gift to celebrate Haley's new beginning. She's going to love it. I took a slow, deep breath. Yelling or crying wouldn't change anything. It would only end with the same old accusations. You're so cold. Don't you care about family? And I'd once again be cast as the villain. Years of experience had taught me that. What's wrong, Emma? Why so quiet? Don't you like my present for Haley's family? I turned my back to him and stood in front of the massive vanity. The face staring back at me in the mirror looked shockingly composed. Dad, cancel this renovation and restore everything to how it was. What are you talking about, Emma? It's almost finished. Haley's been looking forward to it. I'll speak to Haley myself. This is my house. I'm not giving it to anyone. Through the mirror, I could see Daniel's face turning red with anger. How dare you speak to your father like that? When did you become such a cold-hearted person? Those words no longer reached me. I took my smartphone out of my pocket and began to dial. Hello, is this a construction? This is Emma Parker, the property owner. Yes, I'm at the site right now. I'm sorry, but I need you to stop all work immediately. Effective today. After hanging up, a heavy silence filled the space between me and my father, who stood frozen in shock. On his face, there was not just anger, but genuine confusion and helplessness. He had never imagined that the obedient daughter he knew would go this far. Without giving Daniel another glance, I got into my car. As I drove away, I kept thinking, this was no longer just selfish behavior. It was an unforgivable violation of my property, my time, and my peace of mind. If things continued like this, they would consume everything I had. This had to end. For them to finally stand on their own feet. And above all, for me to reclaim my life and my dignity. I would no longer endure the selfish exploitation carried out in the name of family. My peace of mind could only be built on this unshakable decision. The fact that I had unilaterally canceled the renovation of the mountain cabin quickly reached the ears of the rest of the family through my father. There were several voicemails from my mother and multiple hysterical messages from Haley saying, "What are you trying to do?" But I ignored them all. And 3 days later, I was sitting at my office desk staring at a real estate list spread out before me. The header read, List of Owned Properties. It contained the properties owned by my company. Across from me sat my attorney, Jordan Reed. He was reviewing the list with sharp eyes and said in a calm voice, "The list looks accurate, Emma. I've verified every registration record. The ownership of all these properties is completely under your company's name. Legally, nothing can stop you from proceeding." "Thank you, Jordan. You're as quick as always." "That's my job," he said with a shrug, then slid another stack of documents to the center of the table. "And this is the final draft of the letter for your family." I picked up the stack of papers. Each page bore the typed names of my father, mother, brother, and sister. It wasn't just a pile of documents. It was a surgical blade, meant to sever the distorted bond that tied me to my family. A plan that Jordan and I had carefully orchestrated. "Are you sure about this?" For the first time, he spoke not as my lawyer, but as my friend. "Once you send this, there's no turning back. They might resent you for the rest of their lives." I had long since accepted that. What I feared was not their hatred. What I feared was allowing their dependence to consume my life until the day I ended up hating them completely. I had to end it before that happened. I turned to Jordan and spoke clearly. "I have no doubts anymore." "Understood," he said, standing up. "Then we'll have it sent out tomorrow morning. Everyone should receive their copy the following day." At those words, I quietly closed my eyes. 2 days later, my smartphone began to ring loudly. The first letter had likely reached my parents' house in the suburbs of New York. The name displayed on the screen was my mother's. I took a deep breath, gathered my resolve, and swiped to answer. "Hello? Emma, please help us." My mother's half-hysterical scream burst through the speaker so loudly it nearly shattered my eardrum. I could hear her sobbing uncontrollably on the other end of the line. "A letter came from a lawyer. It says we have to leave this house within 30 days. You had something to do with this, didn't you?" She was right. Together with Jordan, I had sent my family a notice to vacate. It stated that they must vacate the property within 30 days. If they failed to comply, legal action would follow, an entirely standard procedure. My mother still believed that I held the key to undoing the situation. Meeting that expectation, I spoke quietly but firmly. "Mom, there's no mistake. The notice says exactly what it means." What's going on? What are we supposed to do?" "Calm down. This isn't something that can be explained over the phone." I kept my voice low and steady, guiding her out of panic. "This Sunday afternoon at 2 o'clock, everyone needs to gather at the house. Dad, my brother, and Haley, everyone. Tell them I said so. I'll explain everything then." "You mean you're holding a family meeting?" "Yes, because this is a family matter." My tone left no room for argument. For a moment, my mother was silent. Then, in a faint voice, she said, "All right," and the call ended. My phone kept ringing afterward, calls from my siblings, but I ignored every single one. For the next few days, I cut off all contact with my family. I continued to meet with Jordan to calmly discuss the next legal steps and prepare for what was coming. And then the fateful Sunday arrived. Just before the scheduled time of 2 p.m., I pulled my car into the driveway of my parents' house. When I opened the front door, the living room was filled with a heavy, suffocating silence. Daniel stood by the fireplace with his arms crossed, and my mother sat in the corner of the sofa, pressing a handkerchief to her eyes. Lucas paced around the room, visibly irritated, while Haley sat next to her husband, glaring at me with a fearful expression. Their eyes were filled with a mixture of accusation, confusion, and faint fear. Looks like everyone's here. As soon as I said that quietly, Lucas burst out, unable to hold back. Don't you looks like everyone's hear me, Emma? What the hell is going on? What's that letter about? And what's Clearwater Holdings supposed to be? Calm down, Lucas, Daniel said gravely, stepping in. Emma said she'd explain everything. Let's hear her out first. He still seemed to believe that I had come here to somehow fix things. That illusion was about to be shattered beyond repair. I took several documents out of my handbag and placed them one by one on the coffee table in the center of the living room. The deed to this house, the deed to Lucas's house, and the deed to Haley's condominium. Each one bore the same name on the line marked owner. Clearwater Holdings, LLC. Let's start with the facts. I looked around the room, meeting each of their eyes in turn, and spoke calmly but firmly. The places you've been calling your homes for all these years have actually belonged to my asset management company since 8 years ago. A heavy silence fell over the living room. Everyone seemed to be struggling to process what I had just said. In my mind, the events from 8 years ago came back in vivid detail. It was around the time when the aftermath of the Lehman shock was leaving its final scars on the real estate industry. Daniel, drunk on his own philosophy that a wise investor acts during a crisis, had poured every cent of his wealth into over-leveraged real estate investments. His plan was recklessly optimistic, a dangerous gamble. And, as expected, reality crushed his dream. The economy worsened, and the loan interest kept snowballing out of control. At that time, I was completely absorbed in my newly founded business, but I couldn't ignore how my mother's voice over the phone grew darker with each passing week. Of course, they knew about my success. They knew I had started my own company and accumulated some wealth, but they didn't know the true extent of my assets, and I had no intention of telling them. They had always carried this unspoken belief that Emma will help us, of course. Then, one day, my mother called. She told me that my father's company's debts had reached a critical stage and that it was only a matter of time before all their properties would be seized. I couldn't abandon them. No matter what had happened, they were still my family by blood. But simply giving them money without conditions was something I absolutely could not do. That would only fuel their lack of financial discipline and deepen their dependence on others. What they needed wasn't rescue, it was structural reform. So, together with my brilliant attorney, Jordan Reed, I devised a plan. First, I established a new asset management company, Clearwater Holdings. Of course, my name didn't appear anywhere on the official registration documents. Jordan handled all the paperwork as my proxy. Through this company, we arranged to purchase all of Daniel's properties along with his debts. That way, the family's entire foundation, the house in the suburbs of New York that Daniel was about to lose, the residence in Connecticut where Lucas lived, and the Manhattan condominium where Haley resided, all legally became assets of my company. Later, I visited the family home, pretending to be just another concerned relative, and told them, an investor group I know has agreed to buy all of the properties, anticipating the land's future value. However, since ownership is changing, they'll need you to pay a minimal rent to stay. The family was overjoyed at the chance to continue their lives at a fraction of the real cost and quickly signed the contracts. But the small rent they paid barely covered the property taxes and insurance premiums. The enormous costs required to maintain the properties, repainting the exterior, plumbing repairs, landscaping, were all secretly borne by my company, the true owner. A few weeks later, Daniel called me. Emma, we can manage the rent, but daily living expenses are tight. Haley's kids' tuition, your mother's medical bills. You're part of this family too, so maybe you could help out a little? Just as I had expected, I agreed to his request, but only on one condition. All right, but I'll be the one managing the money. I'll transfer a fixed amount every month into your account as living expenses. You'll have to make do with that. They accepted those terms, and so they paid rent to my acquaintance's investment group, while receiving an equal amount from me as living expenses. In other words, they were living comfortably on an invisible safety net I had created, practically rent-free. And they only grew more entitled. 8 years of free housing, a life built entirely on my sacrifice. Yet in Daniel's mind, all of it had become nothing more than a right. And now, they had tried to seize even my sanctuary in the mountains without a single word of consultation. I had reached my limit. This warped relationship, this endless chain of exploitation had to end here. That was why, with Jordan's help, I executed this plan. The first to break the silence was Lucas. He glanced between the property deeds on the table and my face, then spoke in a voice full of disbelief. Wait a second, Emma. Your asset management company? Don't tell me this investor group you mentioned, it was you all along? There was no anger in his tone yet, only confusion. That's right. 8 years ago, I took over all your debts and purchased every property. For the past 8 years, you've been living in my houses, nothing more. What? Daniel barely managed to speak. Then the rent we've been paying every month? Yes, that money has been going straight into my company's account as well. At that, Lucas's confusion turned into fury. He slammed his fist on the table and shouted, "You've got to be kidding me. Then this whole thing is one big scam. You deceived us and stole the family's property right out from under us." Stole? I repeated his words calmly. Think back, Lucas. 8 years ago, this family's fortune was already collapsing. The bank was about to take everything. If I hadn't stepped in, where do you think you'd be living now? Even so, you could have handled it differently. Why didn't you just tell us the truth? Why pretend to be someone else? Why make us feel like we were taking charity? I looked around the room, meeting each of their eyes, and finally said what I had kept buried for years. Because I knew exactly what would happen if I told you the truth. You would have treated my assets as your own and started draining them dry. I would have become the family's ATM, forever exploited by the people I love. Isn't that right? No one could answer my quiet question, because deep down they already knew the inconvenient truth. My calm words were the spark that shattered the frozen tension in the room. Haley's lips trembled as she screamed in a high, shaking voice, Then where are we supposed to live? If this house and my condominium both belong to you, are you saying we should live on the street? You're awful. This is cruel. Her hysterical cries triggered Lucas's explosion of anger. How dare you say that? Don't act like you did us some favor. You didn't save us. You wanted to control us. You kept us under your thumb for 8 years. You must have enjoyed every second of it. And finally, Daniel, the man who had tried to maintain his dignity as the head of the family, tore off his mask. His face turned crimson as he pointed a trembling finger at me. Enough, Emma. Don't forget who raised you. I paid for your college, I taught you the basics of business, and this is how you repay me? This house belongs to the Parker family. It's not yours alone. In the corner of the sofa, my mother, Helen, pleaded through her tears. Please, Emma, think this over. We're family, aren't we? No matter what's happened, you can't just throw your family out of their home. That's too cruel. Shouting, accusations, desperate tears. Every emotional weapon they possessed was hurled at me all at once. But none of it reached me anymore. I rose quietly to my feet and picked up a copy of the Notice to Vacate that still lay on the table. I understand how you all feel, but those are your emotions, not facts. I placed the document down in front of my father. And this isn't about emotions, it's about law and reality. This notice is fully valid under the law. You have 30 days. During that time, you'll need to find a new place to live. On your own. That's the reality you're facing now. When I finished speaking, I picked up my handbag and walked toward the living room door. Wait, Emma. Daniel's furious voice pierced my back. This conversation isn't over. Where do you think you're going? I stopped once at the door, without turning around, and said quietly, No, Dad. My conversation with you is over. From here on, this is your family's problem. And with that, I left the house. A few days later, I received a call at my office from my attorney, Jordan. Things are unfolding exactly as we expected, Emma. His voice on the other end of the line was calm as ever. Your sister Haley made a move. She's posted about the situation on Facebook. Of course, in a version that suits her narrative. I immediately opened Haley's page on my tablet. There it was. A long, dramatic post painting herself as the tearful victim. Something unbelievable has happened. Our family is being evicted from our home by my own sister, Emma. After becoming successful in business, she's using her money to control us and tear apart our family bonds. Our elderly parents are devastated, and my young children are about to lose their place to sleep. Please, everyone, help us spread the word about this cruel injustice. Attached to the post was a photo, my mother's tear-streaked face, with Haley leaning against her shoulder. A perfectly staged shot designed to provoke sympathy. The comment section was, as expected, an onslaught of outrage. Unbelievable. How could she do that? Money really changes people. Distant relatives I hadn't seen in years and long-forgotten acquaintances were suddenly playing heroes of justice, denouncing me with righteous fury. In a matter of hours, I had been branded a heartless monster, a woman who abandoned her family for success. Your brother Lucas is also consulting several lawyers, Jordan continued. He's exploring legal action, claiming the contracts are invalid or that your actions amount to psychological abuse. I see, I replied curtly. What will you do? Stay silent? This could hurt your public reputation. I exhaled softly. No, Jordan, I'm done staying silent. With Haley's post still open on my screen, I flipped open my laptop. Then, using my own account, I began drafting a new post. The title? About the truth. I wrote everything, calmly, factually, with supporting evidence. I attached scanned copies of property deeds and portions of bank transaction records, all properly redacted and fully legal to share. And at the end, I concluded with these words. I don't want to throw my family out. I only want to draw a boundary. To protect the wealth I built with my own effort, and to protect my life from endless demands. For the past 8 years, they have lived entirely on my financial support, without paying a single cent in rent. Is ending that support truly an act of cruelty? I'd like to hear your thoughts. My post was a bomb dropped into the sea of the internet. Those who had filled Haley's page with sympathetic comments began to fall silent, or even retract their words. In contrast, my post was flooded with messages of praise and support. Well said. That's the truth. Being family doesn't give them the right to take advantage of you. And more than anything, my post delivered the final blow to my family. For the first time, they were forced to face the fact that the story they had believed in held no weight in the eyes of the world. The sympathy that had once poured into Haley's post vanished, replaced by cold, questioning voices. What's the real story? Are those property records authentic? This wave of social judgment taught them the truth far more powerfully than any words I could have said. During the remaining 3 weeks before the eviction deadline, the Parkers lived in silence, each of them forced to confront their own future. None of them contacted me again. They had finally realized that no hero was coming to save them. About 6 months after they moved out, I heard from a relative that my parents had rented a small apartment on the outskirts of town. Their reputation in the community where they had lived for so many years had collapsed. Former neighbors stopped greeting them, avoiding them altogether. Lucas, too, swallowed his pride and began searching for an apartment he and his wife could afford on their own income. But word of the scandal spread quickly at his workplace. The looks from colleagues and clients turned from friendly to a mix of pity and contempt, and before long, he was forced to resign. Haley, along with her husband and children, left Manhattan and found a cheaper place in the suburbs. The glamorous circle of friends who had once fueled her vanity and pretensions drifted away one by one. She became isolated, both in real life and online. They all lost the audience called society that had sustained their pride and illusions. That social reckoning spoke louder than anything I could have ever said, teaching them the weight of their own mistakes. Whether we will ever rebuild a new relationship as independent individuals, I don't yet know. But for the first time in my life, my heart was filled with genuine, peaceful calm.